Presentation is on eating disorders. This may not be a group of people who we think are oppressed or have dealt with social stereotypes at first, but I want to talk about how eating disorders have developed, how they are viewed today, and what help is available. So let's start with some facts. Let's put into perspective how big the group of those is who really deal with eating disorders. So 20 million, that's the number of people who have an eating disorder during their lifetime. 10 million, that's the number of men who suffer from an eating disorder during their lifetime. 6 years old, the age when people, especially girls, begin to worry about their body weight and image. 12 times higher, women 15 to 24 years old with anorexia nervosa have a mortality rate this much higher than other causes of death. Now a little bit of history. Eating disorders can date back hundreds of years. In the 1800s, people with eating disorders were rarely talked about, and when they were, the doctors said it was a physical disease. It wasn't until the 1900s, and even more toward the end of 1970, that it became a more discussed topic. Doctors began to speak out about it, and research began to be done to see what was causing this disorder. In 1980, a section of eating disorders was finally added to the Manual of Mental Disorders. This was a big step because it was finally classified as a mental disorder, not a physical one. This was a big turning point to getting help to those who were in need. We began to see a rise in counseling centers in the 2000s for eating disorders, and help became more easily available. This has spread to many different treatment centers throughout the U.S. and the world. But although we have seen a push for awareness and help for those with this disorder, there are still many misunderstood facts or assumptions that are made. As I have learned about throughout this course, we often put a single story on a person, or a group of people. We do this for a few reasons. A, it may be all we know. We haven't done our part to fully educate ourselves. Or B, it seems easy. If we are able to put people in groups, then maybe we feel like we can know them without really knowing them. This is what has happened with people who suffer from eating disorders. They have been given stereotypes and labels that make people believe they know what these people deal with or who they are before even meeting them. One of those single stories is that only girls have eating disorders. As I stated earlier, 10 million men suffer with eating disorders in their lifetime. That is not a small group. In fact, the mortality rate for men with an eating disorder versus women is higher because they feel like due to their gender, they can't reach out for help due to embarrassment. Another stereotype is that you have to be skinny to have an eating disorder. While being skinny is a sign of anorexia nervosa, there are many other types of eating disorders. Binge eating and bulimia are two very common eating disorders that deal with overeating. This is another example of a single story. Some think that those who have an eating disorder do it for vanity or to appear pretty. Although yes, social pressure and image is a large factor for eating disorders, there are many others. Because it is a mental disorder, it needs to be treated as one. Commonly, those with eating disorders also deal with anxiety, depression, and OCD, which give them a desire to have control over different parts of their life. Their weight could be one area where they feel like they can control. Their eating disorder is not a choice, it is an illness. This leads into our next stereotype, which is that it isn't a real disease. An eating disorder can't be fixed by just changing a diet, but rather will often require therapy and intervention. So because an eating disorder have been treated as a choice or a phase, this means they will often lack the support or guidance needed to deal with the mental illness. The view they have on what is an ideal body is only reinforced when they go to school or even on the media, and they see successful people who are skinny and seem to be liked by everyone. They would rather have other people like them than be proud of themselves. It might be surprising to know that eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness. Is this because there still isn't necessary treatment available, or because the illness not only affects your mind, but also your body? Over the years, with the rise of media, the ideal image of what a woman or man should look like has changed. From pictures posted by classmates or Instagram stories from celebrities, People have instant access to unrealistic body expectations. They start to become less concerned about their health and future and focus more on what others think of them. There have been celebrities who have talked out about their struggle with eating disorders, which has helped spread awareness. Some of these are Paula Abdul and even Princess Diana. This shows that there isn't one certain stereotypical person who deals with this, but rather it can reach a wide variety of people. The book I read that inspired this presentation is called Elena Vanishing. It is a memoir of Elena's battle with anorexia. She talks a lot about her inner battle of control. She has an inner voice that is constantly telling her she isn't good enough. Her teachers would praise her for her good grades. She was doing volunteer work at a hospital, but she still told herself she wasn't smart, pretty, or successful. She also explains that her depression and anxiety were linked to her eating disorder. Many people were curious about her anorexia, but didn't want to know about it for the right reasons. They were curious, but she felt they didn't care. I began to think about this from a future teacher perspective. I know I will come across students who struggle with mental illness, such as an eating disorder. I need to help them see that I'm not just curious about who they are, but that I actually care. Elena says that even though it took years for her to accept it, she knew she had friends and family that cared and loved her. It was them she trusted enough to help her overcome her anorexia. As a teacher, we need to be sincere. Our students are able to tell when we are genuine and really care about them. So what are schools doing now to help students? One thing that the state of Virginia has done is pass a law that allows voluntary screening for eating disorders. They are educating their teachers for what signs to look for and how to help these students. There's a push now in PE classes to not talk about losing weight through exercise, but rather living a healthy lifestyle. Cooking or food classes are talking about learning hunger cues and a balanced diet instead of doing extreme diets. Because a large percentage of students with eating disorders are athletes, coaches are being trained, or at least educated on signs of eating disorders and how to help their athletes. And finally, helping them understand that it really is a mental illness, and that simply eating won't solve the problem. A teacher might not be able to solve the illness for a student, but they can be a support. This made me think of the movie we watched in class called Beyond the Blackboard. A teacher was sent to a school for homeless children. At first, she was clueless how to help these kids due to their circumstance. But she changed her mindset and began to empathize with the kids and see things from their point of view instead of trying to fix the problem. She began to see success in her classroom, and there was a trust that was between her and her students. This is the key to a teacher being able to help. We often can't fix the problem, but we can be a support. Another great resource is the many treatment centers. There are online chat rooms, group therapy, and many more options. They focus on recovery and self-acceptance. Now, each story of recovery is different, but there are many resources available. One thing that needs to be fixed is the stereotypes placed on this group, and instead of focus on help and acceptance. As I have learned from this class semester, there is always at least one way to connect with someone, and that everyone deserves to be seen for who they are.